Hi guys, tonight we descend into the underground world ancient humans were too afraid to enter, where cold air waits beneath forgotten hills, where flickering torchlight touches wet stone walls, and where buried staircases seem to lead not only below the earth, but backward through time. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the night settles around you, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Maybe it is raining outside your window. Maybe your room is dark except for the soft glow of a screen. Maybe, somewhere far away, another listener is hearing this at the same quiet hour. Now, dim the lights and imagine that you are standing at the mouth of an ancient cave. The hill rises above you in silence. Grass bends in the night wind. Mist lies low among the stones, wrapping the ground in a pale, ghostly softness. Behind you, the world feels almost familiar. There are trees, birds, distant water, the smell of damp leaves and wood smoke, but in front of you, the cave opens like a dark wound in the hillside. You do not step inside yet. You simply stand there, listening. At first, there is nothing. Then, slowly, the cave begins to speak in tiny sounds. Water drops somewhere far within. Air moves through the unseen passages. A faint echo returns your own breathing to you, softer and stranger, as if someone deeper underground has breathed at the same time. For ancient humans, places like this were never just empty spaces. They were shelter. They were protection from rain, wind, and winter cold. They could hold fire, tools, food, sleeping bodies, stories, and memory. But they were also thresholds. A cave mouth marked the border between the known world and something older, colder, and less certain. Researchers continue to question exactly how prehistoric people understood these places. Some scholars suggest caves were practical shelters first, used when the weather forced people inward. Others argue that the deepest chambers were approached with ritual care, perhaps because darkness itself seemed powerful. No one can fully recover the thoughts of a person who stood here 30,000 years ago, holding a torch and wondering whether to go farther. You step closer. The ground changes beneath your feet. Outside, the soil is soft with roots and fallen leaves. At the cave entrance, it becomes stone, slick in places, gritty in others. The air cools sharply. It smells of minerals, old water, and earth untouched by sunlight. Even now, with modern lamps and maps, caves can make the body hesitate. For ancient humans, with only flame, memory, and courage, that hesitation must have felt much stronger. Today, we live above ground in a world of streetlights, glowing windows, electric maps, and locked doors. Darkness is usually something we manage. We switch it off, but ancient people did not command darkness so easily. Night arrived completely. Forests became black. Hills disappeared. A cave did not merely contain darkness, it seemed to produce it. You lift a torch. The flame bends in the cave breath. A few steps inside, the outside world already begins to fade. The foggy hillside behind you becomes a pale opening. No longer a landscape, but a shape. Sound changes. Your footsteps grow louder. Small stones shift under your weight, and every movement travels ahead of you. The tunnel does not need to be deep before it begins to feel alive. This is where the old fear begins, not panic, not horror. Something quieter, a careful fear, the kind that tells you to move slowly. Ancient survival depended on attention. A person who ignored strange sounds, unstable ground, hidden animals, or sudden weather did not last long. So when ancient humans approached underground places, fear was not weakness, it was intelligence. It was the nervous system reading the world carefully, measuring risk in the dark. There could be bears inside, wolves might shelter near entrances, loose stone might fall, Smoke might gather where air did not move, a narrow passage could trap a person, a torch could die. Even a few turns underground could confuse direction, especially when every wall looked similar in shifting firelight. And yet, humans went in. That's the first mystery. If underground spaces were dangerous, why did people enter them at all? You pause beside the wall, watching the torchlight crawl across the stone. It reveals uneven surfaces, old mineral stains, and tiny ridges shaped by water across unimaginable time. Here, the earth does not feel dead. It feels patient. It has been forming itself long before humans arrived. Drop by drop, season by season, in a darkness no sunrise ever touched. Archaeologists have found evidence that prehistoric people used caves in many different ways. Some were temporary shelters, some became places where tools were made and repaired. Some held animal bones, hearths, pigments, carvings, handprints, and paintings deep enough underground that no one would stumble upon them by accident. To reach those places, ancient people had to choose the dark. Still, archaeologists remain divided on what that choice meant. Was it spiritual, practical, social? Did people enter the depths for ceremonies, initiation, storytelling, hunting magic, memory, or contact with the dead? The evidence is real, but meaning hides behind it like a passage just beyond torchlight. You continue. The cave narrows. The ceiling lowers slightly, forcing your shoulders to tighten. A bead of water falls onto your wrist, cold enough to make you notice your own skin. The flame shows a line of scratches on the wall. They may be natural, they may be marks left by tools, they may be nothing at all. Yet underground, nothing feels completely ordinary. This is part of why buried history holds us so tightly. Above ground, ruins are touched by sun and weather. Walls crumble into fields, Roman roads become lines beneath hedges. Medieval churches stand with bells and graves and village paths around them. But underground, time behaves differently. A chamber can be sealed and remain quiet for centuries. A mine can collapse and preserve a forgotten working face. A cellar can be buried beneath a city, waiting under footsteps that never know it is there. Beneath Britain, beneath Europe, beneath ancient settlements across the world, there are layers of human effort most people never see. Roman Britain lies below streets and train lines. Ancient mines cut into hillsides. Buried city walls sleep under modern foundations. Forgotten tunnels appear during construction, sometimes recorded, sometimes misunderstood. Sometimes sealed again. You imagine all of that while standing in this first cave, because the underground story begins here, at the oldest human threshold, before Roman Britain, before medieval crypts, before churches were built over holy wells, before cities buried their own past beneath roads and shops and houses. There was the cave mouth. There was a human body standing between firelight and darkness. You hear the drip again farther in. It is soft, steady, almost like a clock, but it is not a clock. It is older than clocks, older than writing, older than kingdoms. It is the sound of water continuing its patient work while human lives flare and vanish above it. Some scholars suggest that this contrast may have mattered deeply to ancient people. The surface world changed constantly. Animals migrated, fires burned out, children grew, elders died, camps moved, seasons turned, but caves seemed permanent. Their walls outlasted memory. Their darkness remained. To enter them was to step into a place that felt outside normal human time. You move deeper, but not far. This first ascent is only the beginning. Ahead, the passage bends. You cannot see what lies beyond it. The torchlight reaches forward, touches the curve of stone, and stops. The darkness after that looks complete, almost solid. Ancient humans must have known this feeling well. The strange pull of the hidden, the wish to know, the instinct to turn back. And perhaps that is why underground places became so powerful in human imagination. They held both danger and promise. They could protect life, preserve death, conceal treasure, hide enemies, shelter rituals, and swallow sound. They could become homes, tombs, mines, prisons, temples, and legends. You stand still. Behind you, the cave mouth glows faintly with the outside world. Before you, the earth waits, and as the torch burns lower, you begin to understand that the story of the underground is not only about tunnels and chambers. It is about the oldest human question of all. What do we do when the world invites us into darkness, but refuses to tell us what is inside? You remain just inside the cave, where the entrance still glows behind you like a fading memory of sky. The first lesson of the underground is simple, but not comforting. Ancient humans were not afraid because they were foolish. They were afraid because they understood the world more directly than we do. You feel that understanding in your body. The stone beneath your feet is uneven. The air is colder than it should be. The torch gives light, but not enough. It shows one wall, then another, then a broken patch of floor where darkness collects between rocks. You realize how small a human flame is inside the earth. Above ground, fire seems powerful. It pushes back night, warms hands, hardens spear points, cooks meat, gathers people into a circle of safety. But underground, fire becomes fragile. It flickers, it smokes, it can die. Prehistoric humans depended on fire so deeply that it shaped their evenings, their food, their safety, and perhaps even their stories. Around a hearth, a group could speak, repair tools, divide meat, teach children, and watch the darkness beyond the circle. But a cave changed the meaning of fire. Its smoke could cling beneath low ceilings. Its light could distort every wall. A shadow cast by one person could become the size of an animal. A hand raised near the flame could crawl across stone like something separate from the body. Researchers still debate how early humans balanced the usefulness of caves with the risks of entering them. Some caves were clearly used as shelters, especially near entrances where daylight could reach and smoke could escape. Others contain evidence of human presence far deeper inside, in places that demanded planning, lamps, pigments, and trust. The question is not whether ancient people entered darkness. They did. The quieter question is why some spaces were acceptable while others remained forbidden. You take another step. The cave floor slopes slightly downward. This is not yet a deep descent, but your senses change. You listen harder. Your eyes search for movement. The torch breathes with every small current of air. Somewhere ahead, water drips into a hollow place, and the sound repeats in a rhythm that feels almost intentional. Imagine now that you are not alone. Behind you, near the mouth of the cave, a small prehistoric group waits close to the fire. Their clothing is made of hides, stitched and wrapped with care. Their tools are simple in appearance, but not simple in skill. Stone blades have been shaped by hands that understand pressure, angle, fracture, and patience. Wooden shafts are smoothed by use. Sinew is twisted into binding, bone points. Scrapers, awls, and needles lie near a hearth, each one part of a long chain of learning passed from person to person. Outside, the weather is worsening. Rain falls across the hillside. Wind moves through the trees. The night is thick and animal scent. A cave entrance offers safety from weather, but the inner cave offers something else. More space, perhaps. More dry ground. Maybe a place to store food away from rain. Maybe a sheltered corner for ritual. Maybe a passage where minerals, pigments, or unusual stones can be found. Yet the deeper chamber also carries a warning. You can almost feel the group deciding. One person lifts a burning branch. Another watches the cave roof. Someone listens for animals. A child is pulled closer to the fire. No one speaks loudly. In the ancient world, sound mattered. It could warn you, it could betray you, it could travel into places where eyes could not follow. ancient fear was practical first. A bear using the cave for winter sleep could kill without needing to hunt. A pack animal could shelter near the entrance. A wounded creature might hide in the dark. Even smaller dangers mattered. A twisted ankle underground could become life-threatening. A lost torch could turn a passage into a trap. A sudden rockfall could seal a route that had seemed open moments before. But practical fear was probably not the whole story. Some scholars suggest that deep caves may have been treated as unusual mental landscapes, places where ordinary rules softened. Sounds behaved strangely. Light moved unpredictably, the walls seemed to appear and vanish in narrow passages. The body felt pressed by the earth itself. In large chambers, the ceiling disappeared into darkness, and voices returned from invisible heights. You raise your torch higher. For a moment, the flame reveals a shallow hollow in the wall. It looks almost like an eye socket, but it is only stone. Then the flame lowers, and the hollow disappears. That is how caves make meaning. They offer shapes, then withdraw them. For prehistoric humans, whose lives were filled with close observation of animal tracks, cloud forms, plant growth, broken branches, and distant sounds, the cave would not have been an empty background. It would have been a presence. Every stain, crack, echo, and shadow could invite interpretation. Was that mark natural? Was that opening to have had another group been here? Had an animal scratched the wall? Had an ancestor left a sign? Did the cave remember? No one fully understands how ancient humans separated useful caution from spiritual awe. The evidence cannot speak clearly enough, but across many cultures, underground places later became linked with death, rebirth, ancestors, hidden beings, treasures, and the underworld. It is tempting, though not certain, to imagine that the roots of those ideas began much earlier, in the bodily experience of entering darkness beneath the earth. You breathe in. The air tastes faintly of mineral cold. The group at the entrance would know another truth. Underground spaces do not belong entirely to humans. A hut can be built. A fire ring can be arranged. A camp can be chosen and abandoned. But a cave is already there. It has its own shape before people arrive. Humans can use it, mark it, fear it, and remember it. But they do not create it. That difference matters. On the surface, ancient humans lived with movement. They followed herds, seasons, water, edible plants, and safer routes. Their world was wide, changing and alive. A cave was fixed. It waited in the same hill through storms, winters, births, and deaths. A child might grow old and still find the same dark entrance breathing cold air from the stone, and you step farther from the light. Now the entrance is smaller. The outside world is no longer a place you stand in. It's a pale shape behind you. The fire near the cave mouth looks distant, like a star seen through smoke. The people there seem protected by warmth and company, while you are held in a silence that feels older than language. This is where ancient humans faced one of their most powerful contradictions. They needed the underground, but they mistrusted it. They used caves, but they did not always enter their depths. They knew darkness could hide danger, yet they also knew darkness could preserve something precious. Food might last longer in cool spaces. Pigments could be found in mineral seams. Flint nodules might lie within chalk or limestone. Water could gather in hidden pools. Rare stones could be collected. Shelter could be found when the surface world became unbearable. And somewhere in this long relationship, the underground began to change from a place of risk into a place of meaning. You notice the wall again. It is plain, unpainted, and wet in patches. Still, you can imagine a hand touching it thousands of years ago, not casually, but carefully. The hand feels cold stone, follows a crack, pauses at a hollow, then withdraws. Perhaps that person went no farther. Perhaps they returned with others. Perhaps they told a story that night by the fire, not about a monster. Not about a god, but about the feeling of being watched by the earth. Archaeologists remain cautious about such interpretations because imagination can move faster than evidence. A hearth is a hearth, a tool is a tool, a footprint is a footprint, but fear, reverence, and hesitation leave fewer traces. They live in choices, where people stopped, where they returned, where they placed objects, where they painted, where they refused to go. The torch dims slightly. You turn your head toward the entrance. For a moment, you understand the ancient decision. Stay near the fire, where human voices soften the night, or walk farther inward, where every step asks for trust. The cave is not chasing you, it is not threatening you, it is simply waiting, and that may be why it frightened people most. The underground did not need to move, it only needed to remain unknown. The cave grows quieter the farther you travel from the entrance. Not accordant, true silence rarely exists underground. There is always something, a distant drip, a faint movement of air, the tiny crackle of a torch, water slipping through stone somewhere beyond sight. Yet these sounds feel different from the sounds of the surface. They do not belong to birds, leaves, rivers, or weather. They belong to the earth itself. You move slowly. The passage widens enough that you no longer need to watch every step. The walls curve gently around you. Moisture glistens in the torchlight. Shadows gather in folds of stone, shifting each time the flame flickers. Behind you lies the world of campfires and sleeping families. Ahead lies something stranger. This was the boundary that many prehistoric people knew well. Archaeologists have discovered that some of the oldest cave occupations occurred close to entrances, rather than deep within cave systems. That pattern appears again and again across different regions and periods. Ancient people often preferred places where daylight still reached the ground. Smoke could escape, weather could be watched. Animals approaching from outside could be seen. In many ways, the cave mouth was the perfect compromise. It provided shelter without complete separation from the world. You imagine standing there 20,000 years ago, outside. Snow drifts across a cold Ice Age landscape. The wind carries tiny particles of ice that sting exposed skin. The sky darkens earlier than you would like. A hunting party returns tired and hungry. Children gather near a fire. Someone repairs a spear point. Someone else scrapes a hide clean. The cave and entrance glows orange against the approaching night. It feels safe, comfortable, even. Yet only a short distance behind the fire begins a darkness that few people enter casually. Why researchers continue to question this divide? Some scholars argue that practical reasons explain most of it. Daily life simply worked better near the entrance. Cooking, tool-making, conversation, and sleeping all benefited from access to daylight. Deep caves were inconvenient. But others believe something more complicated may have been happening, because while many people stayed near cave mouths, evidence shows that some individuals repeatedly ventured much deeper. You stop beside a narrowing passage. The ceiling lowers, the air becomes cooler. The walls appear smoother here, worn by ancient water long before humans arrived. Imagine carrying a stone lamp fueled by animal fat. The flame is small, its light barely reaches a few meters ahead. Each step requires attention. You cannot see the full chamber around you. You cannot know what waits beyond the next bend. And yet people continued. Not once, not accidentally, repeatedly. One of the most fascinating mysteries of prehistoric archaeology is how often ancient humans chose to enter places that offered no obvious survival advantage. Deep cave chambers are difficult to access. They are uncomfortable, they are dangerous, and they are dark beyond anything most modern people ever experience. Today, even a power outage rarely creates complete darkness. Light leaks through windows, streetlights glow outside, screens illuminate rooms. Ancient darkness was different. It was absolute. If a flame failed deep underground, the darkness would swallow every outline instantly. You would not see your own hand, you would not see the ground beneath your feet. You would not even know where the walls were. That reality alone makes certain archaeological discoveries remarkable. In caves across Europe, researchers have found paintings, carvings, footprints, and traces of human activity located far beyond natural daylight zones. Some chambers required difficult journeys through narrow passages, others demanded careful navigation across uneven ground. The effort was significant, the risk was real, yet ancient people went there anyway. You continue walking. The tunnel suddenly opens into a larger space. Your torchlight cannot reach the ceiling. The darkness above feels enormous. A drop of water lands nearby, then another, then another. The sound echoes softly through the chamber. You pause. This is the kind of place where human imagination awakens naturally. The walls seem alive, the shadows move, the chamber appears larger than it truly is. A simple sound can seem distant one moment and close the next. Many researchers believe caves may have had a profound psychological effect on ancient visitors, not because they believe specific myths that we can identify today. We simply do not know that. Rather, because caves alter perception itself. Time feels different underground. Distance becomes difficult to judge. Sound behaves strangely. Light behaves strangely. Even your sense of direction begins to weaken. You look toward one side of the chamber. The wall is covered in mineral patterns created over thousands of years. White streaks run across darker stone. Tiny crystal surfaces catch fragments of light. For a moment, the patterns resemble animals. Then they become abstract shapes again. Perhaps ancient people noticed similar things. Some researchers suggest that natural formations may have inspired artistic expression deep within caves. A crack might resemble the outline of a horse. A bulge in the wall might suggest the shoulder of a bison. A shadow might hint at movement. While scholars disagree about the details, many acknowledge that cave environments themselves likely influenced human creativity. The cave was not merely a blank canvas, it participated. It offered shapes, suggestions, possibilities. You move toward the far side of the chamber. The ground here is dry. Imagine a small group arriving with lamps and pigments. Their journey has purpose. Perhaps they are carrying charcoal, perhaps red ochre gathered from distant deposits, perhaps tools made from bone or stone. No one fully understands every reason prehistoric artists entered deep caves, but the results still survive. Painted animals emerge from walls after tens of thousands of years. Horses, bison, mammoths, deer, predators, handprints, symbols, mysterious markings whose meanings remain uncertain. Some scholars suggest these images relate to hunting. Others argue for ritual explanations. Still others caution that we may be imposing modern categories on ancient behaviour. The truth remains elusive, and perhaps that uncertainty is part of their power. You imagine seeing one of these images by firelight rather than electric illumination. The experience would be entirely different. The animal would appear to move as the flame flickered. Parts of the figure would emerge and disappear. The wall itself would seem alive. The artwork would not exist apart from the darkness. It would exist within it. This realization changes something. The deeper chambers were not merely places people tolerated. They may have been places chosen precisely because they were underground. The darkness mattered. The isolation mattered. The journey mattered. Researchers remain divided on exactly how these spaces were understood. But many agree that entering them was unlikely to be an ordinary daily activity. Something distinguished these places. Something separated them from the practical world near the cave mouth. You sit quietly beside the chamber wall. The torch burns steadily now. Its warm glow creates a small island of visibility surrounded by endless shadow. The image feels familiar. A human being surrounded by darkness. A fragile light pushing outward. A small circle of certainty within a much larger unknown. In some ways, This pattern defines human history itself. We explore, we learn, we expand our understanding. Yet beyond every circle of knowledge waits another darkness. Ancient people experienced this physically underground. We experience it intellectually today. The mystery changes shape, but it never disappears. You glance back toward the passage through which you entered. The route already looks unfamiliar. The chamber seems capable of swallowing memory. A person entering alone could easily become disoriented. This possibility raises another intriguing question. If underground exploration was dangerous, how did people navigate successfully? Some researchers believe repeated visits allowed certain individuals to memorize routes. Others suggest social knowledge played an important role. Paths may have been taught across generations. Specific chambers may have carried stories attached to them. Particular landmarks may have guided movement through darkness, whatever the method. The evidence suggests remarkable confidence. Ancient humans were not simply wandering blindly underground. They knew these places, at least some of them did, and perhaps that fact is more surprising than anything else, because it means that somewhere in prehistory, certain people became specialists of darkness. They learned the underground world, they remembered its passages, they understood its dangers, and while most people likely remained near the comforting glow of entrance fires, a few continued farther inward, carrying light into spaces where sunlight had never existed. As you rise and prepare to move deeper still, the chamber behind you fades back into shadow. The painted walls of prehistory remain hidden in darkness. The firelit families near the entrance feel very far away, and ahead, beyond the next bend in the stone, the underground world becomes stranger than simple shelter. It begins to become sacred. You move beyond the chamber where firelight made the walls breathe, and the passage narrows again. The deeper stone accepts you slowly. Every step feels deliberate. Your torch leans forward, its flame stretching toward the currents of air you cannot feel on your skin. The floor dips, rises, then dips again. Small pools of water shine briefly you see and vanish behind you. The cave seems to fold around itself, as if the earth has no interest in straight lines. Then, ahead, something changes. At first, you think it is only a shadow. A dark shape rests on the wall, low and uneven, almost hidden by the texture of the rock. You lift the torch closer. Smoke curls upward. The flame brightens. The shape sharpens. It is not random. It has intention, a line, a curve, the suggestion of an animal back, heavy and powerful. Emerging from stone, you stand very still. This is the moment when the underground world stops being only a place of danger, shelter, and survival. It becomes a place of memory. A place where human thought has touched the wall and remained there long after the hand itself vanished. Across parts of prehistoric Europe, cave art appears in astonishing locations. Some images lie in chambers so deep that reaching them required light, planning, and confidence. The people who made them were not wandering by accident. They entered with purpose, they brought pigments, they understood the surfaces, they knew how flame would move across stone, and yet the purpose remains elusive. Were these animals painted to influence the hunt? Were they part of stories told in darkness? Did they mark routes, seasons, clans, visions, rituals, or memories? The archaeological record preserves the marks, but not the voices that explain them. You look more closely. The animal seems to shift in the moving light. Its back rises from a natural ridge in the wall. Its head follows a crack that already existed in the stone. Whoever made it did not ignore the cave surface. They used it. The wall was not flat like a modern canvas. It was uneven, alive with bulges, shadows, hollows, and mineral stains. A small detail changes the picture. The artist may not have simply painted an animal onto stone. They may have seen an animal already waiting inside the stone. Then they helped it appear. This possibility has fascinated researchers for decades. Natural shapes in cave walls sometimes seem to guide prehistoric images. A curve becomes a belly, a protrusion becomes a shoulder, a hollow becomes the shadow of an eye. Interpretation remains difficult, because we can never know exactly what the maker saw first. But the relationship between rock and image is too striking to ignore. You let the torch drift to one side, the animal almost disappears. You bring the flame back, it returns in electric light. Cave art can look like ancient decoration, in firelight. It becomes something more unstable. The image moves because the flame moves. It appears and fades. A painted horse seems to breathe. A bison seems to turn. A line that looked still becomes alive for 1 second, then dissolves into mineral shadow. You can imagine a small group gathered here. No one speaks loudly. The chamber magnifies every whisper. One person holds the lamp. Another touches the wall. Someone prepares pigment from charcoal, manganese, or red ochre. The smell of fat smoke hangs in the air. The stone is cold beneath fingers. A mark is made. Then another. Each line matters because darkness surrounds it. The underground keeps one more secret. Many cave images are not simply animals. There are signs, dots, grids, hand stencils, finger tracings, and abstract shapes whose meaning remains deeply uncertain. Some appear near animals. Others stand alone. Some repeat across wide distances. To modern eyes, they can look almost like codes. But calling them codes may be too easy. No consensus has emerged. They might have marked counting systems, group identities, stories, rituals, altered states, hunting knowledge, or something completely different. Some specialists view them as symbolic communication. Others urge caution, reminding us that similarity does not always equal a shared language. The signs survive, but certainty does not. You pass your hand near the wall without touching it. The ancient marks feel both close and unreachable. A hand stencil is perhaps the most haunting of all. Someone placed a palm against stone and blew pigment around it, leaving the negative shape of a human presence, not a portrait, not a name, not a face, just the outline of contact. You see it in your mind, a hand against cold rock, breath carrying pigment, a brief cloud of red dust, then the hand pulled away, leaving absence as an image. There is something quietly unsettling about that. The person is gone, but the space where their hand once blocked the pigment remains. It is a mark made from presence and disappearance at the same time. In some caves, handprints vary in size. Some may belong to adults, some may belong to younger individuals. Studies have proposed different possibilities about age and sex, but the evidence can be complicated, and not every claim is settled. What matters for you, standing in the dimness, is simpler and deeper. These were human bodies in the dark, real people, breathing, watching, choosing to leave a trace where sunlight never reached. You move deeper along the decorated wall. The images are not arranged like a modern gallery. They do not explain themselves in order. They appear, vanish, overlap, and return. Some are high above, some are tucked into recesses, some are placed where only certain angles of light reveal them. This raises a strange question. Were all these images meant to be seen by everyone, or were some meant for only a few? The discovery challenges simple explanations. If a painting lies in an easy entrance chamber, it might belong to a shared social space. But if it lies beyond narrow passages, difficult climbs, or hidden turns, then access itself may have been part of the meaning. Perhaps the journey mattered as much as the image. Perhaps entering the underground changed the person before they ever reached the wall. You pause beside a low tunnel. To continue, you would need to crouch. The torch smoke brushes the ceiling. You feel the old hesitation again. A decorated chamber beyond such a passage would not be casual. It would require intention. The body would have to submit to the cave. Knees bent, back lowered, breath controlled, flame protected, stone close on both sides. That physical act may have shaped belief, Today, we often separate thought from place. We read symbols on screens, in books, on signs, and imagine meaning as something independent. But ancient meaning may have been inseparable from sound, temperature, smell, danger, and darkness. A mark underground was not just an image, it was an event. You enter the low space carefully. On the other side, the air opens. A small chamber waits. There are no grand animals here, only lines. Simple marks made by fingers dragged through soft clay on the wall. They curve, cross, and wander. Some appear deliberate, others feel almost playful. A person was here, perhaps many people. The marks seem humble, but in the darkness they become mysterious. Why make lines where almost no one would see them? Why touch clay in a hidden Why leave a trace in the Earth's private rooms? The available evidence is incomplete, and perhaps it always will be, but you can feel one answer without claiming certainty. To mark the underground was to answer it. The cave surrounded human beings with silence older than memory. A line on the wall said, softly, "We were here." You turn back toward the passage. The torchlight trembles. Behind you, the marks sink again into darkness, still waiting, still unread. And as you leave them there, you begin to understand why ancient humans may have feared these places, not because they were empty, but because they felt full of animals hidden in stone, full of voices absorbed by walls, full of signs no one now knows how to read. The marks disappear behind you. The chamber grows dim once more. Soon there is only the soft glow of your torch, the sound of water somewhere beyond the walls, and the steady awareness that you are moving farther from the world where people normally lived. This feeling would have been familiar to countless generations, long before kingdoms rose, before cities spread across valleys, before written histories recorded human fears and beliefs. People were already descending into the earth, not merely to survive, not merely to shelter. Something else had begun to draw them downward. You follow a passage that twists gently through the stone. The air feels colder now, not dramatically colder, but enough to notice. The temperature underground remains remarkably stable compared with the changing world above. Summer heat struggles to reach these depths. Winter winds cannot easily enter, for prehistoric people. This difference must have felt extraordinary. Outside, life changed constantly. Storms arrived, animals migrated, rivers flooded, forests expanded and retreated. The sky itself seemed unpredictable, but underground, everything felt still. The earth moved according to slower rhythms. A curious pattern appears across many ancient cultures, again and again. Caves, sinkholes, springs, underground chambers, and deep fissures became associated with forces beyond ordinary human experience. Different societies explain these places in different ways, yet the connection appears surprisingly widespread. The earth below often became linked with origins, spirits, ancestors, hidden knowledge, or realms beyond daily life. Exactly when this association began remains uncertain. The roots may stretch far deeper into prehistory than we can prove. You pause near a narrow opening where cold air drifts steadily outward. It feels as though the cave itself is breathing. Many ancient people would have noticed such things. A cave that exhales cold air in summer. A spring that emerges mysteriously from underground darkness. A hole in the earth that seems bottomless. A chamber where voices return from unseen directions. These places naturally invited interpretation. Humans are meaning-making creatures when confronted with unusual phenomena. We search for explanations thousands of years ago. Those explanations often blended observation with imagination. The result was not ignorance. It was an attempt to understand a world that remained largely mysterious. You continue deeper. The passage widens into another chamber. Its walls are smooth in places and rough in others. Mineral deposits shimmer faintly when touched by firelight. Tiny droplets cling to the ceiling. The chamber feels empty, yet it also feels occupied, not by a person, not by an animal, by significance. This is difficult to describe, but many archaeologists have remarked upon it when discussing ancient ritual space. Certain locations appear to have attracted repeated visits over long periods, despite offering few practical advantages. Objects were deposited, bones were arranged, offerings were left behind. People returned generation after generation. Why? The answer is rarely straightforward. One possibility is that underground spaces gradually became places where humans encountered the invisible parts of existence. Life and death, memory and forgetting, origins and endings. The earth itself seemed connected to these ideas. After all, seeds disappeared into soil before growing, the dead were buried underground. Water emerged from hidden depths. Minerals came from beneath the surface. The ground concealed things and later revealed them. Such observations may have encouraged symbolic thinking, not because ancient people were irrational, but because the physical world itself suggested powerful metaphors. You sit beside a stone outcrop. The torchlight dances across its surface. Imagine a small prehistoric community gathered near the entrance of a cave. An elder dies. The loss is felt deeply. For years, that person had shared stories, knowledge, warnings, and memories. They knew hunting routes. They recognized changing weather. They remembered previous winters. Now they are gone. What happens next? The archaeological records suggest that prehistoric attitudes toward death were often complex. Some communities buried their dead carefully. Others returned to burial places repeatedly. Certain caves contain human remains placed in locations that seem intentional rather than accidental. The deeper significance may never be known with certainty. Yet one possibility remains compelling. Underground places may have become connected with death precisely because they already felt separate from ordinary life. You descend a gentle slope. The torch reveals a chamber floor scattered with ancient stone fragments. Nothing here immediately announces its purpose. That is often the reality of archaeology. The most meaningful places do not always appear dramatic. A chamber can look ordinary while preserving evidence of extraordinary beliefs. A simple deposit of bones can transform our understanding of a society. A handful of artifacts can reveal centuries of repeated activity. The challenge lies in interpretation. Evidence points in multiple directions. One researcher may see ritual behavior. Another may see practical activity later reinterpreted through cultural traditions. Both may possess valid arguments. The underground rarely provides easy answers. There is another layer to the mystery. Some caves contain evidence suggesting that people travelled considerable distances to reach them. This raises important questions. Why journey so far? Why choose a particular chamber? Why return repeatedly? If practical shelter were the only goal, many closer alternatives would have existed. Instead, certain locations seem to have acquired special status. Their reputation endured. Their significance survived. Stories may have guided people there long before maps existed. You imagine such a journey. A group walks through forests beneath an overcast sky. They cross rivers. They climb rocky hills. Hours pass. Perhaps days. Eventually they reach a familiar cave entrance. Children who have never seen it before stare silently. Older individuals recognize every detail. The cold air, the shape of the opening, the sound of water inside. The place already carries meaning before anyone enters. This phenomenon still exists today. People travel long distances to visit cathedrals, temples, monuments, memorials, and ancient ruins. The destination matters because of what it represents. Perhaps certain underground locations acquired similar importance long before formal religions emerged. Modern analysis cannot fully reconstruct those beliefs. The voices that explain them have vanished. Only traces remain. You move toward the far side of the chamber. A crack runs across the wall. Water has flowed through it for thousands of years. Drop by drop, century by century, millennium by millennium. The persistence feels almost unimaginable. Human lives pass quickly compared with geological time. A person somehow may live 70 years. The cave continues unchanged. Empires rise and collapse. The cave remains. Languages appear and disappear. The cave waits. This contrast may have influenced ancient perceptions more than we realize. To enter a deep chamber was to encounter something older and more enduring than any individual life. That experience can feel profound even today, without intending to. You lower your voice. Many visitors to caves report the same instinct. The environment encourages quiet, not through fear exactly, through awareness. You become conscious of your smallness. The earth around you seems vast. The darkness beyond the torch feels endless. A surprising detail deserves attention here. Many later myths across Europe and beyond describe entrances to other worlds located underground. Caves become gateways. Mounds become portals. Deep chambers become thresholds between realms. These stories emerged long after the prehistoric period, yet they may preserve echoes of much older human experiences. The sensation itself requires no mythology. Stand deep underground with only a flame for company, and the idea comes naturally. You are somewhere different, somewhere removed from ordinary reality. The passage ahead descends again. The floor becomes smoother. The ceiling lowers slightly, and the torchlight stretches across wet stone like liquid gold. Behind you lie the painted chambers and mysterious symbols of earlier sections. Ahead waits an even older human instinct, the desire to believe that beneath the visible world exists another hidden one. Whether that hidden world contained ancestors, spirits, memories, gods, or simply unanswered questions depended on the people imagining it. But the underground provided the perfect setting. It concealed, it protected, it endured, and most importantly, it remained just mysterious enough to invite belief. As you continue downward, the cave grows quieter still. The earth seems to close around you. The familiar world above becomes increasingly distant, and somewhere ahead, beyond another curve in the stone, ancient humans will begin carving deeper into the darkness itself. Not for shelter, not for art, but for something hidden within the earth. The passage continues downward. The walls around you gradually lose the appearance of a natural cave. At first, the change is subtle. A corner looks sharper than expected. A surface appears unusually flat. A narrow ledge follows an almost straight line through the rock. Then you notice it clearly. Human hands have been here. Not to paint, not to bury, not to worship, to dig. The torchlight reveals marks cut into the stone itself, ancient scratches, ancient blows, ancient effort. You run your fingers gently across the wall. The grooves are shallow now after thousands of years, yet they remain visible. Someone stood here in darkness and deliberately removed rock piece by piece. This is where the story of the underground takes another turn. Long before Rome, long before medieval miners descended with iron tools, long before industrial machinery pierced mountain, ancient people were already entering the earth in search of resources hidden below the surface. The archaeological record contains remarkable evidence of prehistoric mining activity. Across parts of Europe, communities extracted flint, ochre, copper, salt, and other valuable materials thousands of years before written history. The scale of some operations still surprises researchers today. You continue deeper into the imagined mine. The air feels heavier. The walls close inward. The darkness beyond the torch seems particularly dense here because this space was never shaped by water alone. Human labour altered it. Every tunnel represents decisions, risks, and countless hours of work. Flint was among the most important materials of prehistoric life. Before metal tools became widespread, sharp flint edges were essential for survival. Flint could become knives, spear points, scrapers, drills, and countless other implements. A high-quality flint blade could be astonishingly effective. For ancient communities, locating good flint mattered. Finding large deposits mattered even more. That need encouraged people to dig, and sometimes they dug far deeper than you might expect. A surprising pattern emerges when archaeologists examine certain prehistoric mines. Many of them extended into places that must have felt uncomfortable even to experienced workers. Narrow shafts descended underground. Small chambers branched outward. Networks of passages expanded beneath hillsides. The work required planning. Lighting had to be carried. Tools had to be transported. Excavated stone had to be removed. Most importantly, people had to overcome the natural reluctance to enter confined darkness. You crouch slightly as the tunnel narrows. The ceiling hangs low overhead. Imagine working here by the light of a simple lamp, hour after hour, day after day. The sound of stone tools striking rock echoes through the darkness. Dust fills the air, sweat gathers despite the cold. Every basket of extracted material must be carried back toward the surface. The labour is exhausting, yet prehistoric communities invested tremendous effort into these undertakings. Why? The answer begins with survival. High-quality materials improved hunting success. Better tools increased efficiency. Reliable access to resources strengthened entire communities. But practical necessity may not explain everything. Certain ancient mines contain unusual deposits and objects that suggest the underground sometimes held symbolic importance as well. The picture remains incomplete. Evidence does not always point in a single direction. Some findings appear purely industrial. Others hint at ritual behaviour that accompanied extraction. The distinction can be difficult to untangle. You pause beside a chamber wall. Embedded within the rock is a seam of flint. Even in weak light, its texture differs from the surrounding stone. A prehistoric miner would recognise it immediately. Imagine discovering such a deposit. To ancient eyes, valuable material seemed to emerge directly from the body of the earth. You cut into stone. You remove a hidden resource. You bring it upward into sunlight. The process almost resembles a form of extraction from a living landscape. Perhaps this helps explain why some mining sites later acquired stories, traditions, and symbolic associations. Human beings rarely separate practical activity from meaning for very long. The places that sustain life often become culturally important. A curious clue comes from one of the most famous prehistoric mining complexes in Britain. Deep beneath the landscape of what is now Wales lies an extraordinary site known as the Great Orme Copper Mine. Although much of its activity belongs to the Bronze Age rather than earlier prehistory, the scale remains astonishing. Thousands of tons of rock were removed using surprisingly simple technologies. Standing within such spaces today can feel surreal. The tunnels are narrow, the ceilings are low, passages twist unexpectedly. The darkness seems endless, yet ancient miners willingly entered them, not once, not occasionally, repeatedly across generations. You continue forward. The tunnel bends sharply. For a moment, the torchlight catches something unusual, a small alcove. Nothing valuable remains inside it now, yet you imagine an offering left there long ago, a tool, a carved object, a fragment of bone, a token carried from the surface. Archaeologists sometimes encounter evidence suggesting that mining was not viewed purely as an economic activity. The interpretation remains uncertain, but some deposits appear intentional rather than accidental. Perhaps miners sought protection, perhaps they expressed gratitude, perhaps they followed traditions whose meaning is now lost. The original intention has disappeared into time, only fragments survive. The underground often preserves action tools while concealing motivations. You listen. The imagined sound of mining returns, stone against stone, breathing, footsteps, Voices carried through tunnels in many ways. Prehistoric miners were among the most courageous explorers of their age. Hunters crossed forests, travelers crossed rivers, but miners deliberately entered enclosed darkness where natural instincts urged caution. Every descent involved risk. A tunnel could collapse, air quality could deteriorate, orientation could be lost, injury could occur far from daylight. Ancient people understood danger intimately. Their willingness to continue suggests the rewards were significant. There is another intriguing possibility. Repeated journeys underground may have gradually changed how people perceived the Earth itself. Most individuals experienced the landscape from the surface. They saw hills, valleys, rivers, forests, and an open sky. Miners experienced something different. They entered the interior. They saw layers hidden from everyone else. They encountered strange mineral colors, unusual rock formations, and spaces untouched by sunlight. In a sense, they became specialists in a secret world. This knowledge may have carried social importance. A person familiar with underground passages possessed skills that others lacked. They knew routes, they understood hazards, they recognized valuable materials. Their expertise connected the visible landscape with the hidden one beneath it. You continue deeper. The passage eventually opens into a larger excavation chamber. The ceiling arches overhead, tool marks cover the walls. The space feels both artificial and ancient, a place created through countless acts of human persistence. The chamber invites reflection. For thousands of years, human history has often been told through what rises above ground: temples, fortresses, palaces, cities. Yet much of civilization depends upon what comes from below: stone, metal, salt, water, resources hidden beneath the surface. The underground world helped build the world above, and still it remained unsettling. Even experienced miners carried lamps. Even experienced miners respected darkness. Even experienced miners understood that the earth could not be fully controlled. You sit quietly in the chamber. The flame burns steadily. Shadows cling to distant corners, somewhere beyond sight. Another tunnel disappears into blackness. No map survives. No guide waits ahead. Only the suggestion of further depths. Perhaps that is what makes ancient mines so fascinating today. They reveal a paradox at the heart of human nature. People feared the underground, yet they entered it anyway. They distrusted darkness, yet they carried light into it. They sensed danger, yet they continued descending. Because hidden beneath the earth were things they needed, things they valued, things they believed were worth the risk. And as you rise and prepare to move onward, the marks left by miners begin to fade into shadow behind you. Ahead lies a different landscape. The age of painted caves and prehistoric mines is slowly giving way to another world. Fog gathers above distant hills. Sacred springs emerge from the ground. Burial mounds rise across the countryside. And somewhere in the ancient landscapes of Britain, entire communities will begin treating the underground not merely as a place beneath the earth, but as a doorway into something sacred. The mine fades behind you, and the darkness changes. It is no longer only the darkness of stone passages and worked chambers. It becomes the darkness of a landscape at night, wide and ancient, breathing under fog. You are no longer deep inside a tunnel. You are walking across Britain before the Romans, when hills rose like sleeping animals, when rivers moved through wooded valleys, and when the earth itself seemed crowded with memory. The air smells of wet grass, peat smoke, and distant rain. Your feet follow a narrow track through the dusk. On one side, dark trees lean together. On the other, open ground slopes towards a stream that glimmers faintly beneath the last light. Somewhere far away, cattle shift in an enclosure. A dog barks once, then falls silent. Above the surface, life is practical. People tend animals. They grind grain. They repair fences. They carry water. They watch the weather carefully. because a season of poor harvest can mean hunger. Houses are built from timber, wattle, daub, thatch, and earth. Smoke rises through roofs. Iron tools become increasingly important in parts of Britain during the Iron Age. Communities trade, farm, fight, marry, remember, and adapt. But beneath these daily routines lies another geography, a hidden map of sacred places, springs, caves, mounds, bog pools, rock shelters, deep shafts, burial chambers, entrances in the earth, for the people living in ancient Britain before Roman conquest. The land was not empty scenery, it was layered with significance. A hill was not merely high ground, a spring was not merely water, a cave was not merely a hollow. Places could remember, protect, threaten, or demand attention. And the evidence for belief in prehistoric and Iron Age Britain is difficult to interpret with certainty. These communities left no written explanations in their own voices. Roman writers later described Celtic and British peoples, but those accounts are filtered through outsider perspectives. Politics, fear, and misunderstanding. Archaeology gives us objects, structures, burials, and patterns, but not the full meaning behind them. The surviving clues refuse to form a complete picture. Still, certain patterns are hard to ignore. Across Britain and neighbouring regions, people placed valuable objects in watery or liminal places. Metalwork appears in rivers, bogs, and lakes. Human remains have been found in wetlands. Some caves contain bones, tools, and signs of repeated activity. Burial mounds rise across landscapes in ways that suggest memory and identity were tied to place. You walk toward a low hill, the mist thickens around its base. From a distance, it looks natural, but as you approach, you notice the shape is too regular. It is not simply a hill, it is a mound, built or reshaped by human hands long before you arrived. Grass covers it now. Small flowers bend in the wind. Rainwater darkens the soil. Inside, there may be a chamber, or nothing accessible anymore, or bones long vanished into earth. This uncertainty is part of its power. A burial mound changes the landscape by making the dead visible on the surface while placing them beneath it. It says that the past is not gone. It is underfoot. It watches from below the grass. It shapes the living world quietly. You stand beside the mound and listen. The wind moves across it with a soft, brushing sound. For ancient communities, such places may have anchored memory across generations. A child could grow up seeing the same mound on the horizon. Stories might explain who lay within, though over time those stories could change. A grave built for one purpose might later acquire another. A sacred place can outlive the people who first made it. That is one of the underground's strangest qualities. It preserves presence while erasing explanation. You continue across the foggy slope. Ahead, water emerges from the ground at the base of a stone outcrop. It flows clear and cold into a shallow pool before becoming a stream. The spring seems ordinary at first, but then you notice offerings in your imagination. A pin, a coin from a later age, a broken blade, a bead, a small object placed carefully where water rises from hidden depth. Springs have drawn human attention for thousands of years. The reason is not difficult to feel. Water appears from nowhere. It comes out of darkness. It sustains life. It moves between underground and surface as if crossing a boundary humans cannot follow. Spring is a doorway that flows. One interpretation suggests that ancient people may have viewed certain springs as places of contact between worlds. Another possibility is more social and practical. Springs were gathering points, route markers, reliable water sources, and places where repeated human activity naturally accumulated meaning. These explanations do not cancel each other in ancient life. Practical and sacred often live together. You kneel near the water. It is colder than the air. When you touch it, your fingers ache slightly. You imagine someone doing the same 2,000 years ago, perhaps asking for healing, luck, protection, or safe passage. Perhaps they spoke no formal prayer, perhaps they simply placed an object in the water and watched it vanish beneath the surface. The act would feel small, but the place would remember. The trail leads onward through trees. Night gathers. The forest is not silent. Branches creak, leaves whisper, something moves in the undergrowth. The sky is mostly hidden, and the ground is uneven. You begin to understand why ancient routes mattered. Without modern roads, electric light, or maps glowing in your hand, travel depended on memory, landmarks, stars, rivers, ridgelines, and local knowledge. A cave entrance appears ahead. It's partly hidden by the vegetation. Cold air spills from it. You stop at the threshold. This cave is not like the painted chambers of deep prehistory, nor like the mines where people extracted stone and metal in ancient Britain. Caves could become places of storage, refuge, burial, ritual, or fear, depending on time and region. Some were used repeatedly, others may have been avoided. Some held animal bones, some held human remains, some became entangled with legends much later. Here the narrative becomes more complicated. A cave can serve many purposes across centuries. One generation might shelter there, another might deposit offerings, another might bury the dead, another might tell stories of spirits or hidden people. When archaeologists excavate such a place, they often find layers of activity stacked together, like memories pressed into soil. The physical traces survive, but their meaning is less certain. You lift the torch. The entrance glows. The first few meters seem safe enough. Beyond them, darkness folds inward. The ancient fear returns, but now it is surrounded by a wider cultural world. This is no longer one small group facing a cave for shelter. This is a landscape where underground places have become part of how communities imagine life. Death, land, ancestry, and power. Far above these underground spaces, hill forts rise in some regions. Roundhouses cluster behind banks and ditches. Fields spread across the countryside. Iron tools bite into soil. People exchange goods across land and sea. Britain is not isolated, not primitive, not empty. It is alive with networks, identities, rivalries, and traditions. Yet beneath all that activity, older fears remain. The cave still waits, the spring still rises from darkness, the mound still holds its silence. You step into the cave only far enough for the outside world to dim. Behind you, fog moves through the trees. Ahead, the passage bends. You can feel how ancient Britain prepared the mind for the underground world the Romans would later enter. Reshape and bury beneath their roads and towns. The Romans would bring stone walls, drains, cellars, baths, temples, and cities. They would impose order on the surface, but they did not arrive in an empty land. They arrived in a place where the earth was already full of hidden meanings, and as your torch flickers against the cave wall, you sense that beneath Roman Britain, beneath medieval churches, beneath modern streets, an older map still lies waiting. The older map of Britain remains beneath your feet as the scene changes around you. The fog thins, the forest opens, a road appears. Not a narrow track pressed into mud by generations of feet, but a straighter, harder line across the land, gravel, stone, packed earth, and careful engineering carry it over distances that once depended on memory and local knowledge. The road does not wander like a path made by animals or villagers. It insists, it crosses, it organises. You're entering Roman Britain. At first, the transformation feels like a surface story. Forts rise, towns spread, villas appear in the countryside. Soldiers march along roads. Merchants move pottery, oil, wine, metalwork, grain, salt, and ideas. Latin words enter the landscape, coins pass from hand to hand, bathhouses steam in the cold air, walls define streets, law, taxation, and imperial power press themselves into the island. Yet the underground does not disappear. It becomes busier, more deliberate, more engineered. You walk into a Roman town at dusk. Smoke hangs low above tiled roofs. Hooves strike stone. A cart creaks along a street. Somewhere, a blacksmith works late, each hammer blow-ringing against the evening. Lamps begin to glow in windows. The smell of bread, damp wool, horse sweat, and wood smoke drifts between buildings. Beneath this ordered town lies another town, not hidden in legend, but built into daily life. Drains run below streets. Cellars sit beneath shops and houses. Wells reach downwards toward water. Hypercourse systems carry heat under floors in villas and bathhouses. Storage pits hold goods in darkness. Foundations sink into earlier layers of soil and occupation. The Roman world above ground depends quietly on the spaces below it. The stone begins to tell a different story here. Unlike the prehistoric cave or mine, many Roman underground spaces were designed to be controlled. They were measured, lined, paved, braced, channeled, and maintained. Darkness was not treated only as a mystery. It became a practical problem to solve. But control was never complete. You descend a small stone stairway into a cellar beneath a Roman building. The air cools at once. The noise of the street fades into muffled vibrations overhead. The walls are made of stone, mortar, and brick fragments. The floor smells faintly of earth, damp plaster, and stored grain. Wooden shelves may once have held amphorae, tools, textiles, lamp oil, or goods waiting for sale. It feels safe enough, human-made, purposeful. Yet a cellar still changes the mind. You are below the footsteps of others above you. People that speak, trade, eat, argue, and sleep. Down here, their world becomes only sound. The ceiling separates you from ordinary life, and the old underground feeling returns in a quieter form. Roman Britain was not a single uniform experience. Life varied greatly between military forts, rural farms, major towns, villas, and native settlements that continued changing in their own ways. Some people embraced Roman habits, others adapted them selectively. Many lives remain poorly documented, especially those of labourers, enslaved people, women, children, and rural communities. The material record gives shape to the world, but many voices are missing. Still, excavations reveal a remarkable range of subterranean and semi-subterranean activity. Wells were dug deep into soil and rock. Drains carried waste and water away from streets and bathhouses. Shrines sometimes stood near springs or watery places. Burials lined roads outside settlements. Industrial areas cut pits and channels into the ground. The Roman presence did not erase older relationships with the earth. It layered new systems over them. You climb out of the cellar and follow a narrow lane toward a bathhouse. The building is quiet now. Earlier in the day, it would have been full of voices, steam, splashing water, conversation, business, gossip, and social display. Roman bathing was not simply about cleanliness. It was part of public life. People met there, relaxed there, negotiated there, and performed a certain idea of civilization. But beneath the warm rooms lay a hidden mechanism. You descend toward the hypercourse. The space under the floor is low and shadowed. Small stacks of tiles once supported the raised floor above. Hot air from a furnace circulated through the void. Warming rooms from below, in the walls. Box tiles could help carry heat upward. To someone standing in the bathing chamber, the warmth might have seemed smooth and effortless. Down here, you see the labour behind comfort. The most revealing evidence is sometimes hidden beneath the polished surface. Someone had to feed the furnace, someone had to carry fuel, someone had to clean ash, someone had to repair tile stacks, maintain channels, and keep the system working. Roman engineering could feel elegant, but it depended on hard physical work. The underground world of Roman Britain was therefore not only mysterious, it was social, It reveals hierarchy. One person reclines in a heated room, another sweats beside the furnace. One person enjoys the illusion of order, another works in smoke, heat, and shadow. You move through the dim underfloor space, careful not to disturb the imagined tile pillars. The torchlight makes them look like a miniature buried city, rows of supports holding up a vanished world. Here, the narrative becomes more complicated. Roman builders were highly practical, but underground and watery places still carried religious meaning. Across the Roman world, springs, wells, and caves could be associated with deities, healing, offerings, and local cult traditions. In Britain, Roman and native religious practices often blended in complex ways. A sacred spring might gain a Roman-style temple. A local deity might be paired with a Roman name. Offerings might continue in old places under new forms. The debate often centres on how much continuity existed between pre-Roman sacred landscapes and Roman religious practice. Some sites suggest adaptation rather than replacement. Others may represent new traditions introduced by soldiers, settlers, merchants, and officials. The evidence varies from place to place, and simple answers flatten the complexity. You step outside again. Night has fallen over the Roman town. Rain begins lightly. It taps roof tiles, darkens street stones, and runs into channels along the road. The drains receive it. Water disappears beneath the paving, carrying the surface downward into hidden roots. You follow the sound. A drain entrance opens near the edge of the street. It is small, black, and wet, not inviting. Yet it is part of the town's life. Without drainage, streets flood, waste accumulates, foundations weaken, movement becomes difficult. The Roman appetite for order required constant negotiation with mud, water, decay, and gravity. The underground was where that negotiation happened. A closer look reveals something unexpected. Roman towns often buried earlier layers as they expanded, burned, rebuilt, and changed. A street might be resurfaced several times, a building might rise over an earlier structure, rubbish pits might become sealed time capsules, a fire could destroy one phase of occupation, only for another to be constructed above it. This means that Roman Britain was already becoming archaeological while people still lived in it. The past was being buried in real time. You stand in the rain and imagine centuries passing. A timber building collapses, a stone wall replaces it, a well is filled in, a cellar is abandoned, a floor is raised, a street is repaved, objects fall, break, vanish, and wait. The underground slowly thickens with human traces, and beneath some Roman towns, older native landscapes remain still deeper. Ditches, pits, burials, field systems, and sacred places may lie below Roman foundations, reminding you that conquest does not erase what came before. It covers it, interrupts it, transforms it, and sometimes accidentally preserves it. You walk toward the town wall, beyond it. Darkness spreads across fields and wooded hills. Inside the town, lamps glow in orderly rooms. Outside, the older island waits. Between them lies the underground, holding both stories at once. Roman Britain did not conquer the ancient fear of descending below. It redirected it into drains, cellars, wells, furnaces, and foundations. The earth beneath the town became useful, managed, and engineered. Yet every stair leading down still asks the same quiet question. What waits below the world we think we understand? Rain falls over the city above you, not the Roman town you just left, but London, larger, louder, and layered far beyond anything its first builders could have imagined. The streets shine beneath modern lights. Buses pass. Underground trains move through tunnels with a low metallic roar. Office windows glow high above pavements where thousands of feet cross the same ground each day. Yet beneath all of this, another city remains. You descend. A stairwell carries you below the surface. The sound of traffic fades. Air grows cooler. Concrete gives way in your imagination to older brick, then older stone, then damp earth pressed around forgotten walls. London does not reveal its past all at once. It releases it in fragments. A wall beneath an office, a road below a basement, a well under a construction site, a fragment of pottery sealed in river mud, temple floor beneath the financial district. The ancient city is not gone. It is buried. Roman Londinium began as a settlement near the Thames after the conquest of Britain. Its position made sense. The river carried goods, people, news, and power. Roads connected it to the wider province, warehouses, markets, homes, baths, workshops, and public buildings grew across the landscape. Fires destroyed parts of it, rebuilding followed, centuries passed. The city changed shape again and again, but the ground remembered. You walk along an imagined Roman street hidden beneath modern London. The paving stones are worn. Rainwater runs along the edges. A merchant closes a shutter. A soldier passes by, cloak dark with weather. Somewhere, bread is baking, somewhere else. An animal is being led through a yard. Lamps flicker in doorways. Latin mixes with local speech, with accents from across the empire. Above this buried road, modern life continues without noticing. People check phones, coffee cups steep, shoes strike pavement, elevators rise. The distance between the two worlds may be only a few meters, yet it feels like crossing centuries. What makes London especially powerful as an underground mystery is not that one lost Roman city lies beneath it. It is that layer after layer of human life has been compressed into the ground. Roman streets, medieval cellars, plague pits, rivers forced underground, Victorian tunnels, wartime shelters, modern foundations, service passages, and train lines all crowd together beneath the surface. The city is not simply built on history, it is built through history. The material record is rich, but it is also fragmented. Excavations appear when construction opens the ground, when tunnels are dug, when old basements are cleared, when redevelopment allows archaeologists a brief chance to look below. The story often depends on moments of exposure. A site may be visible for weeks or months, carefully recorded, then covered again. The underground gives, then closes. You pause beside a surviving stretch of Roman wall. It stands in shadow, rough and dignified. Its stones holding the memory of a city edge. Once, walls were statements. They marked protection, authority, fear, belonging, and control. To stand inside was to be part of the ordered urban world. To stand outside was to face roads, cemeteries, fields, and uncertainty. But now the wall itself is enclosed by later London. A boundary that once faced outward is now trapped inside the city it tried to define. That reversal feels strange. The past has become internal. Hidden among London's buried remains are places that feel almost impossible to reconcile with the modern city above. The Temple of Mithras, discovered in the 20th century and later reconstructed, offers one of the most evocative examples. Mithric worship was practiced across parts of the Roman Empire, often in enclosed, cave-like spaces. These temples were not natural caves, but they could imitate the atmosphere of one low, secretive, inward, separate from the street. You step into such a space in your mind. The ceiling is low, the light is dim, the air holds the smell of oil lamps, damp stone, and gathered bodies. Outside, Londinium trades and argues. Inside, worshippers enter a controlled darkness. This detail changes the mood entirely. Even in the Roman city, where roads and drains tried to discipline the earth, certain underground or cave-like spaces were chosen because darkness gave them power. Not all sacred places wanted sunlight. Some needed enclosure. Some needed secrecy. Some needed the feeling of descent. The precise experience of worship in Roman London remains partly beyond recovery. Inscriptions, sculptures, altars, building remains, and comparative evidence help us understand broad patterns. Yet the private emotions of participants are gone. We know the setting better than the heartbeat within it. Still, you can feel why such a place mattered. Below the noise of the city, the world narrows. The mind quiets. A ritual performed underground feels removed from ordinary time. You leave the temple and move toward the river. The Thames has always shaped London's underground story. Its banks shift, its mud preserves, its floods threaten, its crossings determine movement. Objects lost or offered into the river can survive for centuries in silt. The water carries away and conceals at the same time. Along the ancient waterfront, timber structures once held back mud and supported trade. Ships arrived with goods from other parts of Britain and the Roman world. Amphorae, tiles, coins, leather, writing tablets, and countless small objects entered the city's life. Some were used, broken, discarded, buried, and eventually rediscovered. A small object can become a doorway. A writing tablet darkened by water, a shoe preserved in mud, a broken comb, a child's toy, a coin dropped and never recovered. At first glance, these things seem ordinary, but ordinary objects are what make the buried city human. Grand walls show power. Small losses show life. Someone forgot that shoe. Someone carried that comb. Someone held that tablet while thinking about money. Work, obligation, affection, or worry. The underground is full of unfinished human moments. You follow the buried streets farther. Somewhere above, the modern underground train system moves through its own tunnels. Passengers stand close together under electric light, rarely thinking of Roman wells, medieval cellars, hidden rivers, or ancient debris around them. They descend without fear because the tunnels are mapped, named, lit, and scheduled. Ancient descent was different. No glowing signs, no platform announcements, no reliable escape route. Only stone, flame, memory, and the knowledge that below the city, ordinary rules loosened. Yet modern London still carries a trace of the old unease. A closed station platform glimpsed through train windows, a bricked-up arch, a service door in a tiled corridor, a dark passage beyond a locked gate. These places feel mysterious not because they are ancient, but because they remind us that every city has another city hidden inside it. The archaeological picture is far from complete. London has been rebuilt so many times that some layers are damaged, others missing, and others sealed beneath places difficult to reach. The ancient city survives unevenly. Some parts are well documented, others remain shadows in the record. You stand now in a dark cellar beneath an imagined street. Water drips somewhere nearby. The ceiling vibrates faintly with modern movement above. Roman London, medieval London, industrial London, and modern London seem to occupy the same breath. This is where the underground world becomes more than a place below ground, becomes a way of understanding time. Human beings do not simply replace the past. They build over it. They walk above it. They forget it until a foundation trench cuts through soil and reveals a wall no one has touched for centuries. You listen. A train passes far away, or perhaps it is thunder, or perhaps, for one sleepy moment, it is the sound of a cart rolling along a Roman street beneath the rain. You cannot tell. And London, deep beneath London, keeps breathing in the dark. It begins with a trench, not an ancient trench, but a modern one. The morning is cool. Construction equipment stands silent for a few moments before work begins. Steel barriers line the edge of a busy street. Office workers pass by carrying coffee. Traffic hums in the distance. To most people, this is simply another building project. Then the soil changes colour. A worker notices it first. A darker band appears beneath a layer of compact fill. The texture is different. The pattern looks deliberate rather than natural. Archaeologists are called. Machines stop, brushes, trowels, measuring tools, cameras, notebooks, and patient observation take over. At this depth, the story shifts. What seemed like ordinary ground begins revealing an older world. You kneel beside the excavation. The earth is damp from recent rain. Small fragments of pottery emerge from the soil. A section of wall appears. Then another. A narrow stone-lined feature stretches beyond the edge of the trench. The discovery is real. The explanation is not immediately obvious. This happens more often than many people realize. Across Britain and Europe, construction projects regularly uncover forgotten underground structures. Some are quickly identified. Wells, drains, foundations, cellars, storage pits. Others are more difficult. A passage appears where no passage was expected. A chamber survives beneath a later building. A tunnel runs toward nowhere obvious. The feature does not resemble nearby structures. And that is where the imagination begins to stir. You descend into one such discovery. The entrance is narrow. Modern lights illuminate rough stone walls. Moisture gathers in the joints between blocks. The air smells faintly of earth and old minerals. Above you, the city continues its daily routine. Down here, time seems suspended. The tunnel extends farther than expected. This detail alone has fueled countless stories. People love hidden tunnels, secret routes, forgotten passages, underground escapes. Lost networks beneath ancient towns. Some of these stories prove true, many do not. Yet the fascination persists because tunnels occupy a special place in the human mind. They promise hidden connections. They suggest unseen movement. They imply that the visible world may be only part of the story. You walk slowly along the passage. Water glistens on the floor. The ceiling arches overhead. The walls feel close enough to touch with both hands. At first glance, the structure appears simple. Then something catches your attention. The tunnel changes direction abruptly. Why? A drain would usually follow practical gradients. A service passage might aim for efficiency, yet this one bends sharply. The layout appears deliberate. Archaeologists occasionally encounter features that do not fit comfortably into established categories. That does not mean they are mysterious in a supernatural sense. More often, it means information is missing. A collapsed section may have removed key evidence. Later construction may have destroyed connections. Wooden elements may have decayed completely. The structure survives. Its context does not. This creates one of archaeology's greatest challenges. You can stand inside a tunnel. You can measure it, photograph it, map it, date associated materials. Yet the original reason for its existence can remain frustratingly distant. You continue forward. The passage opens into a small chamber. Nothing dramatic waits inside. No treasure, no hidden throne, no forgotten king, only stone walls and silence. Yet the silence around the discovery is almost as interesting as the discovery itself. Why build this space? Why here? Why underground? The chamber keeps its distance from interpretation. One investigator suggests storage. Another proposes drainage management. A third sees evidence of phased construction, arguing that the space changed purpose over time. All three explanations may contain elements of truth. Ancient structures often lived multiple lives. A cellar becomes a workshop becomes storage. Storage becomes abandonment. Abandonment becomes burial beneath later buildings. Centuries pass. The ground rises. The chamber disappears, till someone digging a foundation uncovers it again. You sit quietly in the dim space. Drops of water fall from the ceiling at irregular intervals. Each sound seems amplified. This sensory experience matters more than we sometimes acknowledge. Ancient people felt places physically. A chamber was not merely a function, it was temperature, echo, smell, darkness, confinement, stillness. These qualities could influence how a space was used and remembered. A narrow underground room naturally feels different from an open courtyard. The body understands the distinction immediately. Far above, clouds move across the sky. Down here, there is only stone. A closer examination reveals tool marks along one wall. Not many, just enough to indicate human effort. Someone carved this surface. Someone shaped this chamber. Someone worked by a lamp or torch in conditions far darker than modern visitors experience. Imagine that labour, the limited light, the confined air, the uncertainty of progress, every removed stone creating a little more space, every day carrying material upward, every descent requiring trust. The underground world was never easy to build. Perhaps that is why hidden structures fascinate us. They represent concentrated effort directed toward places most people would never see. There is another aspect often overlooked. Many ancient tunnels and chambers were not secret at all when first constructed. They became secret later. A cellar known to everyone in a Roman neighbourhood becomes forgotten after abandonment. A drainage channel loses its purpose when a town changes shape. A storage room disappears beneath later buildings. Knowledge vanishes gradually. The underground keeps receiving layers. Generation after generation forgets what earlier generations considered ordinary. Eventually, rediscovery feels mysterious. The mystery comes not from original secrecy, but from accumulated forgetting. You leave the chamber and continue deeper into the excavated complex. Another corridor emerges, then another. Not a vast labyrinth, not an underground kingdom. Something more realistic. A collection of practical spaces that survived because they were buried. Yet the effect remains powerful. The deeper you look, the less straightforward the story becomes. A wall from one period intersects a floor from another. A drain cuts through an earlier feature. A collapsed ceiling conceals an older layer below. The underground records history in 3 dimensions, above ground. Time often feels linear, below ground, centuries stack vertically. You literally move through them, a foot lower, another century, another meter, another era. The soil becomes a timeline. The trench becomes a history book written in layers rather than pages. The excavation team records everything carefully. Measurements, photographs, drawings, coordinates, context numbers, samples. Because once excavation begins, the original arrangement cannot be restored exactly as it was. Archaeology is both discovery and destruction. To understand a buried feature, you must carefully dismantle part of it. That responsibility shapes every decision. You reach the far end of the tunnel. The passage stops abruptly at a collapse. Broken stone fills the way forward. Beyond it may be nothing, or another chamber, or another passage, or simply undisturbed earth. The trail grows faint here. No one knows for certain what once lay beyond. Perhaps future excavations will reveal more. Perhaps they will not. The underground is patient. It does not hurry to explain itself. You turn back toward the entrance. The modern world waits above. Traffic, glass towers, electric lights, crowded sidewalks. But as you climb the steps, you carry a new awareness with you. Beneath every city lies a hidden archive. Not a perfect archive, not a complete archive, a fragmented one. Walls without names, passages without maps, rooms without voices. The remains of countless ordinary lives compressed beneath later generations. And somewhere ahead in our descent through history, the underground world becomes even stranger. Because the next places were not forgotten by accident. Many were deliberately sealed, protected, hidden, or built beneath sacred ground itself. Church bell sounds above you, not loudly, not sharply. It moves through the evening air in slow bronze waves, crossing rooftops, grave markers, wet grass, and narrow village lanes. The sound feels familiar, almost comforting. It belongs to a world of candles, stone towers, wooden doors, worn pews, and names carved into old headstones. But you are not standing in the nave, you are below it. A stairway descends behind a locked wooden door. The steps are narrow, polished by age and damp in the corners. The air cools as you go down. Dust gathers in the stone joints, somewhere above. The bell continues to ring, softened now by the thickness of floor and foundation. You enter a crypt. The ceiling is low. The walls hold the smell of old mortar, candle smoke, earth, and time. Shadows sit between stone arches. The world of daylight worship has become a muffled presence overhead. Down here, the church feels older than itself. This is where the underground story changes again. For centuries, Christian buildings across Britain and Europe were raised on places already rich with memory. Some stood near springs, some near burial grounds, some near Roman ruins, some near older sacred landscapes whose meanings had shifted long before anyone wrote them down. Not every church was built on a pre-Christian holy site, and the idea can be overused, but in certain places, continuity, reuse, and transformation are impossible to ignore. The record is uneven. Some locations show clear layers of earlier activity. Others only invite speculation. Still, the pattern is emotionally powerful. A sacred building rises above ground, while beneath it lie bones, older walls, sealed spaces, and fragments of belief that came before. You walk slowly through the crypt. Your torchlight becomes candlelight in your imagination. A monk passes quietly with a lamp. His robe brushes stone. His breath appears faintly in the cold air. Above him, the church contains chanting, incense, scripture, and ritual order. Below him, the crypt contains the dead. In the medieval world, underground spaces within churches were not merely practical storage areas. They could hold relics, burials, tombs, and the physical remains of people believed to be holy or important. The faithful might journey long distances to pray near such remains. A crypt could become a place of closeness to sanctity, but also to mortality. You pause beside a stone coffin. Its surface is plain, no face, no dramatic carving, only a long human shape resting in darkness beneath a house of prayer. The meaning of such spaces was not fixed. For some, a crypt might promise hope, resurrection, and sacred nearness. For others, it may have carried unease. Even within Christianity, the dead were both present and waiting. They belonged to memory, but also to a future beyond ordinary life. The site offers clues, but not a solution. You can describe the architecture, you can identify the stone, you can trace phases of construction, but the feeling of descending below a church into the company of the dead is harder to measure. The underground becomes emotional evidence. It teaches through temperature, shadow, and silence. You continue forward. A small window high in the wall admits almost no light. Water stains run down the stone beneath it. The floor is uneven, patched by later repairs. Above, footsteps pass. Someone moves a chair, a door closes. The living church continues, unaware of how clearly sound travels downward. This layered experience would have shaped medieval imagination. Heaven was above, hell was often imagined below. The grave was beneath the feet, relics rested under altars, pilgrims knelt above bones. The symbolism was physical. People did not need abstract theology to understand vertical space. Up and down were felt through the body. To descend was to approach earth, death, hiddenness, memory, and sometimes danger. To ascend was to return to air, bells, sky, and ordinary life. Yet Christianity did not simply erase older underground associations. In many places, it redirected them. Holy wells offer one of the most atmospheric examples. You leave the crypt in your mind and walk into a damp valley at dawn. Mist lies over the grass. A small stone structure shelters a spring. Water slips from darkness into a basin, worn smooth by generations of hands. Moss covers the stones. Ribbons or scraps of cloth hang from nearby branches in a later folk tradition. The place feels quiet, intimate, and older than any single name attached to it. A holy well can be Christian, local, medicinal, folkloric, and ancient all at once. The categories blur. People came for healing, blessing, protection, fertility, safe childbirth, relief from illness, or simply because their parents and grandparents had come before them. The water mattered because it emerged from below. The saint mattered because the church gave the place a story. The older landscape mattered because the spring had already been speaking long before the chapel was built. A different school of thought proposes caution here. Not every holy well preserves a prehistoric cult. Some may have developed in the medieval period or later. Others may combine traditions in ways that cannot be neatly separated. The deeper you look, the more the timeline branches, but the emotional continuity remains. Water from underground becomes a point of contact, a place where the hidden world touches the visible one. You kneel beside the spring. The water is clear enough to reflect the sky, but its source remains unseen. That is the mystery of springs. They reveal movement without revealing origin. They make the underground generous, in a world where illness could arrive suddenly, where childbirth was dangerous, where crops failed and travel was uncertain. Such places offered more than superstition. They offered ritual action. A person could come, touch water, leave a token, say a prayer, and feel that fear had been placed somewhere. Even today, you understand the impulse. Modern medicine, weather forecasts, and maps have changed our lives. But they have not removed uncertainty. People still visit graves. They still light candles. They still return to places where memory feels concentrated. The form changes. The human need remains. You return to the church. The crypt is darker now. Candles burn low. One overlooked detail deserves attention. Many churches preserve fragments from earlier buildings within their walls. Roman brick reused in medieval stonework. Carved stones reset in new positions. Old foundations incorporated into later plans. The building itself becomes a kind of archaeological layer above ground, while the crypt and graves continue the layering below. A church can be both a place of worship and a container of older ruins. You touch the wall. A block of stone may have belonged to another structure before this one. A Roman building, a ruined villa, a forgotten shrine, a boundary wall. No one worshipping here centuries later may have known its first use, yet the material remained, carrying one world into another without explanation. This is how history survives, not always as memory, sometimes as stone reused by hands that no longer understand its origin. The underground world beneath churches is therefore not only about religion, it is about transformation. Old places become new places. Pagan landscapes become Christian landscapes. Roman ruins become medieval foundations. Burial grounds grow deeper. Wells acquire saints. Crypts hold bones beneath altars. Nothing is entirely erased. Everything is reinterpreted. You stand at the foot of the stairs. Above you, the church bell has stopped. The silence after it feels wide. For a moment, the crypt seems to listen. Then you begin climbing toward the door. Each step brings warmer air, faint light, and the smell of rain on grass. But before you leave, you look back once more into the dark space beneath the church. It is calm, not frightening, not empty, a place where the living built holiness above the dead, and where older shadows remained folded quietly beneath prayer. You begin with a grave, not a grand tomb, not a royal chamber filled with gold, just a hollow cut into the earth, quiet and narrow, shaped for one human body. The sky above is grey, rain has softened the soil. A small group stands nearby in silence. Their clothing is rough against the cold. Their hands are muddy. Someone holds an object close to the chest. Perhaps a bead, a blade, a small pot, a token whose meaning belongs to this moment and this community alone. You feel the weight of the scene before anyone moves. Death has always changed the ground. To bury a person is to alter the earth deliberately. It is to open the surface, place memory inside it, and close the world again. The body disappears, but the place remains, the soil knows. Across ancient Britain and much of Europe, burial practices varied enormously through time. Some people were laid in graves, some were cremated, some were placed in mounds, stone chambers, caves, barrows, cemeteries, or special deposits that do not fit easy categories. Customs changed by region, period, status, belief, and community. The pattern is never simple. But one fact returns again and again. The dead were often placed below. You kneel beside the grave. The walls of the cut are damp. Roots protrude from the side. The bottom is dark and soft. This is not just a hole. It is a threshold made by human hands. For the living. The body is leaving the visible world for the dead. Perhaps the journey has only begun. The final purpose remains out of reach. Archaeologists can record posture, grave goods, bone condition, soil layers, orientation, and dating evidence. They can compare one burial with another. They can identify patterns, injuries, diet, disease, ancestry, and movement. Yet the private meaning of grief cannot be excavated cleanly. A skeleton can reveal a life. It cannot fully reveal a farewell. You watch as the body is lowered. The group moves carefully. There is no haste. A grave is practical. But it is never only practical. Even when objects are few, even when the burial is simple, the act itself requires intention. Someone chose the place. Someone prepared the ground. Someone returned the soil. Perhaps words were spoken. Perhaps there was chanting. Perhaps there was only quiet. The record cannot always tell. What it can tell is that burial made the underground personal. A cave could frighten. A mine could provide. A tunnel could connect. But a grave held someone known, a parent, a child, a companion, an elder, a stranger. A body placed beneath the earth transformed darkness into memory. You step away from the open grave and walk toward an older burial mound in the distance. It rises beneath a pale sky, covered in grass and wind. From outside, it looks like part of the landscape, but inside there may once have been a chamber of stone or timber, a space built for the dead and then sealed away. Dawn light touches the mound. No entrance is visible now. That absence matters. Many prehistoric monuments were not designed like modern buildings. They did not always invite constant access. Some were opened, used, closed, reopened, altered, and sealed across generations. Others may have been permanently hidden after construction. The relationship between the living and the dead was not one fixed ritual, but a changing conversation across time. The story turns on an ordinary thing. A stone, one slab placed upright, another laid across it, then another. Together, they form a chamber. The chamber becomes a container. The container becomes a monument. The monument becomes a memory in the landscape. You imagine entering such a place when it was new. The passage is low, you must bend, the air is cold and still. Light from outside fades quickly. Inside, the chamber holds bones, perhaps arranged, perhaps gathered after earlier exposure, perhaps added over time. The bodies are not always complete in ways modern expectations might imagine. In some prehistoric burial contexts, bones were moved, sorted, revisited, or combined to modernize. This can feel unsettling to the people who practiced it. It may have been normal, respectful, even necessary. Interpretation becomes delicate here. A disarticulated bone may suggest disturbance. Ritual handling, secondary burial, later intrusion, or natural processes. Context matters, soil matters, position matters, comparison matters. The same physical clue can lead to different possibilities. The structure tells us something, though not everything. You sit inside the imagined chamber. Water seeps slowly along one wall. The stone smells cold. Outside, wind passes over the mound. But inside you hear only the small sounds of enclosed space. The dead are not visible as faces anymore. They are fragments, presences, remains. Yet the chamber feels full. There is no need to invent fear. The place creates its own feeling. Underground burial asks the living to trust the earth with what they love. It also asks them to confront the thought that all bodies return below the surface in some form. For ancient people, this would not have been an abstract idea. Death happened close to home. Bodies were prepared by hands that knew them. Grief occurred in small communities where every loss changed the social world. You leave the chamber and return to the open air. Scene shifts. Now you are walking beneath a later church floor. Where stone slabs mark graves underfoot, the underground has changed again. Burial is no longer only under mounds or in fields. It is beneath sacred buildings, beside altars, in crypts, around churchyards, layered in consecrated ground. Footsteps pass above the dead. Prayers rise above them. Rain falls on the roof. Bells ring over bones. The vertical symbolism is impossible to miss. The living gather above. The dead rest below. The sacred building holds both. In some places, burials accumulated so densely that the ground itself became thick with human remains. Generations slept beneath the same walls. The question survives longer than the answer. Did people feel comfort knowing they would rest near the holy? Did they fear disturbance? Did they imagine protection, resurrection, status, remembrance? Different people at different times may have held different hopes. You pause beside a skull in the dimness of an ossuary. It is not grotesque, it is quiet. The bone has lost individuality, yet not humanity. Empty eye sockets face nothing. The jaw is slightly open, as if interrupted in thought. Around it lie other bones, arranged by necessity, custom, or later reorganization. A single skull can feel anonymous. A room of skulls becomes overwhelming, not because it is loud, but because it makes time visible. Every person once had a voice, warmth, hunger, sleep, fear, memory. Now they have become part of the underground archive. You notice something small near the bones? A ring, perhaps imagined, perhaps real in another site. A personal object changes everything. Suddenly the dead are no longer an idea. Someone wore that, someone touched it. Someone may have chosen to keep it close. In archaeology, grave goods can illuminate identity, trade, craft, belief, age, gender, status, and affection. But they can also mislead if read too confidently. Objects do not translate themselves, they wait. You walk onward through the burial dark. The floor slopes slightly. The air smells of limestone dust and old wood. Here, the underground is not a world ancient humans were only afraid to enter. It is a world they created because they had to face what frightened them most. The dead had to go somewhere. Grief needed a place. Memory needed a location. The earth became that location again and again. And so the fear of underground places changed. It did not vanish. It became ritual. It became architecture. It became burial. It became the slow, solemn act of placing human life into darkness and trusting that darkness to hold it. As you climb away from the graves, the surface world seems briefly fragile. Houses, roads, forests, churches, and cities all stand above a second landscape of the dead. Beneath every footstep lies the oldest human truth. We live above what we have buried. Someone is hiding beneath the floor. You hear their breathing before you see the place itself. It is slow, controlled, and frightened above. Footsteps cross a wooden room. A chair scrapes. Voices speak in low tones. Rain taps against shutters, a fire burns somewhere nearby, but its warmth does not reach the narrow space below. You're crouched in darkness. The ceiling is so low that your back aches. Dust gathers in your throat. The air smells of dry timber, earth, old straw, and fear. A thin crack of light cuts across one wall, just enough to show the rough boards above your head. The underground has changed again. It is no longer only sacred, no longer only ancient, no longer only burial or memory. Now it is survival. Across history, people have used hidden spaces when the surface became dangerous. Caves, cellars, priest holes, tunnels, mine shafts, crypts, basements, and concealed chambers could become places of refuge. Some were planned carefully, others were improvised in moments of panic. A space meant for storage might become a hiding place, a tunnel meant for drainage might become an escape route, a cave known to shepherds might shelter fugitives. The story survives in fragments, a local tradition, a blocked passage, a concealed room, a scratched mark on stone, a doorway sealed behind plaster. Not every tale can be proven. Some underground legends grow larger with each retelling, yet the human need behind them is real. When power moves violently across the surface, people look downward. You remain still beneath the floor. The footsteps above stop. For a moment, every sound becomes enormous. A drop of water somewhere in the wall, a shift of dust, your own heartbeat. The body understands danger before the mind forms words. Ancient humans felt it at cave mouths. Medieval villagers felt it in cellars. Refugees and fugitives across centuries felt it wherever darkness offered concealment. Imagine a monk hiding manuscripts during a raid. Imagine villagers sheltering in a cave while soldiers pass through the valley. Imagine a family descending into a cellar during violence, famine, or fire. Imagine someone hunted for their faith, politics, debt, identity, or simple misfortune, waiting in a hidden chamber while the world searches above. The underground does not ask why you come, it only holds you. For many communities, surface life could become unstable quickly. War, raids, persecution, plague, taxation, invasion, and local conflict all shaped where people felt safe in Britain and Europe. Castles, monasteries, churches, houses, and towns developed hidden or semi-hidden spaces for many reasons. Some were defensive, some were practical. Some later acquired stories of escape that may or may not be accurate. The interpretation changes depending on which clues are prioritized. A passage might be a drain, or a storage corridor, or an escape route, or all three at different times. A chamber might look secret today only because its original entrance vanished. A tunnel might seem mysterious because later buildings severed it from its purpose. Still, there are places where concealment was unmistakable. You crawl through a narrow opening behind a wall. The passage is barely wide enough for shoulders. Your hands press against cold stone. The torch cannot be raised fully, so the light trembles low near the floor. Ahead, a small chamber waits behind thick masonry. Someone made a decision in this room. They chose to hide space itself, not an object, not a document, an entire pocket of darkness. Concealed rooms carry a different kind of unease from caves. A cave is natural and ancient. A hidden chamber inside a house or church is intimate. It turns familiar architecture into a mask. The wall you trusted may contain another wall. The floor you walked across may cover a breathing human being. The room you thought you understood may be only the visible half of a secret. This is why stories of underground escape remain so powerful. They suggest that ordinary life has a hidden underside. The kitchen, the chapel, the inn, the village lane, the manor house, beneath them. Someone waits. You sit in the hidden chamber. The darkness feels dry and close, unlike the wet cave passages earlier in your descent. Here, silence is not geological. It is social. It is the silence of not being found. Above, voices fade. A door opens. Rain grows louder for a moment, then softens again. To hide underground is to surrender control. You cannot move freely. You cannot speak. You cannot see the danger clearly. You depend on others, on timing, on memory, on the strength of a door, on the hope that no one notices fresh dust or a hollow sound behind a wall. The underground becomes a test of trust. The person hiding must trust the builder, the guide, the friend above, the darkness itself. A traveller enters the picture here. He arrives at dusk, soaked from rain, carrying little more than a bundle. He knows the roads are watched. He knows questions are dangerous. He is led quietly through a back room, then down a stair, then behind a panel. The entrance closes. The world disappears. No grand mystery is needed. The fear is enough. Hours pass, perhaps days. Food is passed through a gap. Water follows. A whisper gives news from above. He sleeps lightly, waking at every sound. The underground has saved him, but it has also trapped him. Safety and imprisonment become almost the same thing. That contradiction appears again and again in hidden spaces. A cave shelters you from weather, but may contain predators. A mine gives wealth, but may collapse. A crypt preserves sanctity, but surrounds you with death. A secret chamber protects life, but removes light, movement, and certainty. The underground offers protection at a price. You rise and move through another passage, older now, cut beneath a ruined structure at the edge of a village. The entrance is half blocked with fallen stone. Ivy covers the surface above. The local story says it once connected the church to a distant house. Another version says smugglers used it. Another says monks fled through it during violence. Another says it goes much farther than anyone has dared to crawl. The tunnel ends after 20 meters, or perhaps it once continued. The ground has collapsed. The last witnesses disappeared centuries ago. This is how underground legends grow. A real feature becomes the seed. A cellar, a drain, a blocked passage, a hidden stair. Then memory adds purpose, escape, treasure, forbidden worship, lost civilization, secret route to the coast. The tale may become false in detail while preserving a truth in feeling. People know that the ground hides things. They know that danger sometimes drives humans below. They know that every sealed entrance invites a question. You turn back toward the surface. The hiding place falls silent behind you. There is no painting on its wall, no offering beside a spring, no formal grave, only darkness shaped by fear and necessity. Yet this too belongs to the underground history of humanity, not the fear of entering darkness because something ancient waits there, the fear of staying above because something human waits there. As you climb into the rain-washed night, you understand that the surface has never been entirely safe. Sometimes the earth below seemed frightening, sometimes it seemed holy, and sometimes, when footsteps approached in the dark, it became the only place left to breathe. The story begins with a whisper, not in a cave, not in a crypt, not in a tunnel. It begins beside a fire on a cold evening, when darkness has already swallowed the edges of the village, and the wind presses softly against the walls. Someone points toward a distant hill. The hill looks ordinary enough during daylight. Sheep graze there, wild grass moves with the seasons, rain washes over its slopes. Travellers pass without much attention, but after sunset, people tell a different story. They say there is a city beneath it, a buried one, a forgotten one, a place where halls still stand in darkness beneath the earth. The listeners lean closer, the fire crackles, the tale continues, across Britain and much of Europe. Stories of hidden underground worlds have survived for centuries, lost kingdoms beneath hills, sleeping warriors beneath mountains, sunken churches hidden underground, cities trapped below lakes, entire civilizations sealed beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to return. These legends vary enormously, yet they share a common shape. Something valuable has vanished below, and something remains there still. You walk across the hillside at dawn. Mist drifts over the grass. The ground is damp beneath your boots. Birds call from distant hedges. Nothing suggests a buried city. Nothing suggests an underground kingdom. And yet the story persists. Why? The answer may have less to do with fantasy than with memory. Human landscapes are full of ruins. A mound stands where nobody remembers a settlement. A broken wall emerges from woodland. A strange depression cuts across a field. A sealed entrance disappears beneath vegetation. Generations inherit these features without always inheriting their explanations. Eventually, stories rush in to fill the silence. The imagination dislikes empty spaces. You reach the summit. The wind is stronger here. From this height, you can see fields, villages, streams, roads, and distant woods. The landscape appears peaceful, yet beneath that peaceful surface lie thousands of years of human activity. Buried houses, forgotten boundaries, ancient graves, abandoned trackways, lost foundations. Most people never see them. The earth does. Everything changes because of a doorway, at least. That is how one legend tells it. A shepherd notices an opening on the side of a hill. Curious, he enters. The passage slopes downward. He follows it farther than expected. The tunnel widens. A chamber appears, then another. Eventually he discovers a vast underground hall illuminated by a mysterious light. There he finds sleeping warriors, or hidden treasure, or an enchanted king. The details change depending on the region and the storyteller. The structure remains remarkably consistent. A hidden entrance, a descent, a lost world, a returner. These stories appear so often that they deserve attention. Not because they are literally true, because they reveal something about how people think. For centuries, ordinary people encountered traces of forgotten civilizations without understanding their origins. A prehistoric mound might appear unnatural but unexplained. Roman ruins could survive long after their builders were forgotten. A collapsed tunnel might suggest greater depths below. Legends became a form of historical interpretation. Not accurate history, but an attempt to explain visible mysteries. You descend the far side of the hill. The grass gives way to exposed stone. Rainwater has carved shallow channels through the slope. Among the rocks lies a depression partially concealed by vegetation. The feature is real, its original purpose is uncertain. Perhaps it was a quarry, perhaps a collapsed chamber, perhaps a natural formation later woven into local stories. The physical evidence raises more possibilities than answers, yet standing beside it, you understand how legend begins. The opening invites questions. Questions invite narratives. Narratives survive longer than explanations. A small village nearby may tell children never to enter. Another village may claim hidden gold lies below. A third may insist that bells can still be heard underground on certain nights. Generation follows generation. The tale grows. The feature remains. This relationship between landscape and folklore becomes particularly fascinating when archaeology enters the picture. Sometimes excavations reveal that legends formed around genuine ancient sites. A mound believed to contain a sleeping king turns out to be a prehistoric burial monument. A hill associated with hidden people contains caves or mines. A mysterious earthwork traces the outline of a forgotten settlement. The legend is not correct, but it is not completely disconnected from reality either. Memory survives in distorted forms. You stop beside a weathered standing stone. Lichen covers much of its surface. Rain has softened its edges over centuries. No inscription explains why it stands here. No plaque identifies the people who first raised it. Objects like this often attract stories. They seem too deliberately to ignore. Too old to explain easily. Too visible to forget. One forgotten generation leaves behind a monument. 10 generations later, its purpose fades. 20 generations later, Stories emerge 50 generations later. The stories may feel older than the monument itself. The explanation may have vanished with the people themselves. Only the stone remains. You continue toward a valley where an old church stands. The building is modest. Grey stone walls, a simple tower, graves surrounding it. Sheep grazing nearby, local tradition claims another church lies beneath it, not beside it, beneath it. The story insists that the visible building replaced an older sacred structure now buried underground. Whether the tale is true hardly matters for the moment. The interesting part is the instinct. People repeatedly imagine deeper versions of familiar places. A church beneath a church, a city beneath a city, a road beneath a road, a kingdom beneath a hill. The underground becomes a repository for lost possibilities. Not just lost objects. Lost worlds. You step inside. The church is empty. Sunlight filters through narrow windows. Dust moves through the beams. The floor feels solid beneath your feet. Yet you find yourself wondering, what lies below? Not because you expect treasure, because human beings are naturally drawn toward concealed layers. Every floor suggests another floor. Every wall suggests hidden spaces behind it. Every sealed doorway suggests a street. This tendency helps explain why underground myths remain so persistent even today. Modern cities produce their own versions. Forgotten subway stations, secret military tunnels, abandoned bunkers, lost catacombs, hidden chambers beneath famous buildings. Most prove more ordinary than rumour suggests. Some reveal genuine surprises. The fascination never disappears, because the underground remains psychologically unfinished. You cannot see through it. You cannot easily map it in your imagination. It preserves possibility. The afternoon light begins to fade. Clouds gather over the hills, the standing stone, the mound, the church, and see the strange depression all seems slightly different now. Shadows soften their edges. Distances become less certain. This is the hour when stories feel most convincing. Not because darkness creates falsehood, because darkness reminds you how little any generation truly sees. Most of human history remains borrowed. Most ancient buildings survive only as fragments. Most names are gone. Most explanations disappeared long ago. The underground becomes a symbol of that absence, a place where forgotten things continue existing beyond sight. You look once more toward the hill. No buried city reveals itself. No hidden king emerges. No underground bells begin ringing. The landscape remains quiet, and yet the legend survives. Perhaps that survival is its own kind of truth. Not a truth about literal kingdoms beneath hills, truth about memory itself. Human beings sense that something important lies below the surface. Sometimes archaeology confirms it. Sometimes folklore imagines it. Often both happen at once. As evening settles across the countryside, the hill returns to shadow, the grass moves in the wind, the stories remain, and somewhere beneath the visible landscape, real chambers, real graves, real tunnels, and real forgotten places continue waiting in darkness, indifferent to every legend told about them. The first light arrives quietly. A pale band appears along the horizon. Mist drifts through the hollows between hills. Dew gathers on grass blades and catches the growing light like scattered fragments of glass. The world feels suspended between night and day. You stand before a prehistoric mound. No legend accompanies it this morning. No storyteller points toward hidden kings. No church bell echoes from a nearby village. There is only the mound itself. Grass covers its slopes. Rabbits have burrowed into one side. Small flowers grow where ancient builders once carried soil basket by basket. At first glance, it seems almost natural. Then you notice its shape, too symmetrical, too deliberate, too human. The people who built this place vanished thousands of years ago. Their language is gone. Their names disappeared long before written records existed in Britain. Yet the mound remains exactly where they placed it. That endurance is remarkable. Many houses vanish within generations. Wood decays, roofs collapse, fields change ownership, roads shift, but earth monuments often survive. They settle into the landscape and become part of it. You begin walking toward the summit. The grass is wet beneath your feet. Skylarks sing somewhere above the mist. The air smells clean, carrying hints of soil and distant water. As you climb, you are retracing a journey made by countless people over centuries. Some came to bury their dead, some came to remember them. Some came because tradition required it. Others came because curiosity drew them. The mound existed long enough to acquire many lives. This is one of archaeology's most fascinating lessons. Ancient monuments rarely belong to a single generation. They continue changing meaning long after their builders are gone. A burial mound may later become a landmark may become a sacred place. A sacred place may become the centre of a legend. The physical structure remains. Its interpretation evolves. You reach the top. The view opens in every direction. Fields stretch toward distant woodlands. Streams reflect morning light. Other mounds appear faintly on the horizon. Subtle rises that many travellers might never notice, yet prehistoric communities noticed them. The placement was intentional. Monuments were often positioned where they could be seen. Visibility mattered. Memory needed a landscape. The clue is smaller than your hand, somewhere far away. A train moves beneath a city, somewhere else. An archaeologist closes a trench for the evening. Somewhere under a hill, a cave chamber remains completely dark. Somewhere beneath a church, old stones cool slowly in silence. Not every discovery wishes to become clear, and Blakers reveal themselves only partially. That is not failure, it is part of their nature. The underground world ancient humans feared was never only dangerous. It was deep, hidden, echoing, and difficult to understand. It made people feel small. It made them careful. It gave shelter. Resources, memory, and mystery became a place for art, death, worship, escape, labour, and legend. It became everything the surface could not be. You breathe in the evening air, the descent is ending. But the thought remains. How much of humanity has truly been lost, not destroyed? Not entirely gone, just buried beyond sight, waiting under fields, under towns, under roads, under forests, under the quiet places we cross without looking down. Perhaps that is why ancient humans were afraid to enter the underground world. They sensed what we still sense when standing before a dark opening in the earth, that below us lies not emptiness, but memory and memory. When it is deep enough, can feel almost alive. The wind moves across the grass, the hills darken. The entrance behind you becomes only a shadow in the slope. You do not need to enter again tonight. It is enough to know that it is there. Here is the final calming wind down that follows section 20. The night settles gently across the hills. The last traces of daylight fade from the horizon, leaving only soft shadows stretched across fields, ancient paths, and forgotten mounds. Somewhere beyond sight, rain falls lightly over distant forests. Somewhere else, a stream continues its quiet journey through stone and earth, following routes older than memory. You no longer need to descend, the caves remain where they have always been. The tunnels remain, the buried roads, the sealed chambers, the hidden wells, the silent graves. All of them rest beneath the surface, patient and undisturbed. The wind moves softly through the grass above them. A church bell rings far away, then fades. The sound drifts across the landscape and disappears into the night. You imagine the countless generations who once walked these same hills, farmers returning home at dusk, travellers following fading roads, miners emerging from darkness, monks carrying lanterns, children listening to stories beside winter fires. Their footsteps are gone now. Their voices have faded, yet traces of them remain beneath the earth, resting quietly in the dark. The underground world does not hurry. It does not demand attention, it simply waits. Stone cools, water drips, roots grow slowly through ancient soil. Above, the stars continue their silent movement across the sky. Below, history sleeps, and as you rest tonight, you can leave the mysteries where they belong. The chambers will remain sealed. The forgotten tunnels will remain hidden. The unanswered questions will remain patient. There is comfort in that. Not every story needs a final answer. Not every secret needs to be opened. Some are allowed to rest. The hills grow darker. The wind becomes softer. The ancient world drifts farther away. Only stillness remains. Only quiet. Only sleep. Sweet dreams.